Welcome to Motivational Interviewing. My name is Desiree Cochran Norfolk. I have a master's in addiction counseling and I'm a certified master addiction counselor. So, when we're talking about motivational interviewing, I want to discuss the stages of change and how they apply to addiction counseling. It's going to be important that you have an understanding about why people come to treatment because it's going to help you to understand the best way to help them. So, when you celebrate the new year, do you customarily make promises about something you want to change in your life, something you want to do differently? According to Forbes, the most common New Year's resolutions, 45% of people say they want to improve mental health, 39% say they want to improve fitness, 37% say they want to lose weight, 33% say they want to improve diet, and 30% say they want to improve their finances. So if you remembered your commitments, were you able to uphold them? According to Forbes, their 2020 New Plate survey found 55% of respondents did keep their New Year's resolutions, but they only kept it for less than a year. 11% of those people lasted 6 months, and 14% lasted at least 3 months, and 19% lasted at least 1 month, and just 11% lasted less than a month. So you see, when some people make a decision to change their behavior, they're able to stay committed to their goal. But some people have trouble sticking to their commitments. They either forget, or maybe they lose interest, or they're derailed by some other priority. And most people think that changing behavior is like just turning on a light. You just flip this switch and suddenly your life has changed. But actually, changing behavior is not like that at all. It's not like that for most of you, and it's not like that for drug users either. So to begin our discussion, let us consider that there are different stages of thinking that a person undergoes in committing to and making a decision to change something in their life. In this unit, we're going to learn about a model that describes these stages of thinking, what we're going to call the stages of change. We also learn about how to identify which stage someone's in. And understanding which stage a person is in is going to help you to determine which strategy is ideal for assisting them to achieve the change that they want to achieve. So we're going to learn how to be detectives, how to determine how enthusiastic a person really is about changing their behavior. We're then going to learn how to respond in a way that encourages the client to change their behavior. So at the end of this unit, you should have a good understanding of the stages of change model. You should know of any unhelpful assumptions that prohibit your client's behavior change, understand the concept of motivational interviewing, understand the rationale of motivational interviewing interventions, and really just appreciate the interplay between the stages of change model and motivational interviewing. So now this is a diagram that really outlines the stages of change based on this model. So people in the pre-contemplation stage are not considering making any change in their drug use within this foreseeable future. They're often referred to as happy users. Their focus is on the benefits that they obtain from their drug use, and they really just discount or ignore any of those potential or existing problems. They might hear messages of concern, but they're going to discount any potential or existing problems. And if those pre-contemplators come for help, it's usually because of pressure by other people, like a spouse who threatens to leave, parents who threaten to disown them, or police or probation officers who threaten to punish them. In the contemplation stage, the person's become aware that a problem exists and is considering giving up or changing their substance use, but they still haven't made that commitment to take any action yet. And then people in the contemplation stage, they may be making statements to themselves like, I really should give up heroin, or I think I need to cut down on my drinking. And they may stay stuck in this stage for a long period of time. It's not uncommon for a person to move back and forth between the contemplation and the pre-contemplation stage a number of times, before they move into the preparation stage. So contemplators may weigh the cost of their substance use against the benefits, and they may also evaluate the benefits that they obtain from their substance use against the amount of effort or time or energy it's going to cost them to change their use. The contemplation stage is primarily characterized by serious consideration of the problems, coupled with the ambivalence about change. Then in the preparation stage, users are going to start to look at the costs of their use more critically. These costs may include financial, social, health, or legal, and they see the negative consequences of drinking or their other drug use as outweighing the benefits. And they may have already made some small behavioral changes, such as delaying the time of their first cigarette in the morning. And this is the time when clients need encouragement and assistance in setting some realistic goals and developing a plan of action. A client's goal may not be abstinence, but cutting down or controlling their substance use may be a goal. And this is a good time to discuss the range of possible strategies to achieve those goals. In the action phase, the client's actively taking steps to change their behavior, but maybe they haven't reached a stable state yet. So during this stage, you can really begin to engage the client in treatment. This is a good time to support the client or consider some realistic changes that they can achieve, some small steps at a time. And it's also important to acknowledge any difficulties your client faces in this early stage of behavior change. So you're going to need to assist your client to assess whether they have strong family and social supports. And then based on your joint assessment, you can then move forward with really mobilizing potential support to help your client achieve their goals. So in the action phase, it's going to be important to help the clients identify those high-risk situations and really to develop some appropriate coping strategies. And then in the maintenance stage, the client has changed. They have maintained these new behaviors for a relatively long period of time, at least 6 weeks. So, for example, an individual in this stage whose goal is abstinence, they're working hard to prevent relapse, and they've had some relative success. They're working to maintain this success. So it's going to be important to reinforce the benefits of maintaining this change. It's also important to help them to identify and enjoy non-drug sources of pleasure. And it's also important to maintain support for these lifestyle changes that they're making. So through your regular sessions, you're going to be affirming their resolve for change and really supporting their notions for self-efficacy. This maintenance stage is also a time to really review and plan long-term goals with your clients. And the model that's described in this slide was developed by Prochaska and DiClemente, and it incorporates relapse as a part of the normal progression of change. And so if you're provided sound relapse prevention training, or if you're providing that sound relapse prevention training, your client should be equipped to manage slips or maybe reduce the risk of slips developing into this full-blown relapse. I'll typically describe the difference to my clients in a lapse and a relapse. Lapse is something that you do and then you get back on track. A relapse would be, I smoked and screw it, I'm just going to go buy the whole pack. They're going to go back into it. So explaining that difference to them, having them know what that is. Very few clients progress through the stages of change in a linear fashion. We as counselors should expect the client to relapse many times during the recovery process and should really avoid being upset with your client for relapsing. A client may return to an earlier stage several times before they achieve their goal. So, for example, a client in the preparation stage may decide that it's just too hard and they're going to be moving back to being a happy user for a period of time. And if clients do relapse, they may feel embarrassed or guilty and ashamed, and they may feel like failures. But each time they will have gained new information based on their behaviors, and they're going to be able to use this information during subsequent attempts for them to change. So the most critical action that we can make during this process is assessment. Knowing where the client stands in terms of the stages of change is really going to assist us in providing the most appropriate strategy. Some strategies that we can use for each of the stages, for pre-contemplators, there's going to be advice or information, maybe some pamphlets or books, risk minimization strategies and commodities like condoms or new needles or syringes. For contemplators, we want to do problem assessments, education, increasing any discrepancies. For preparation, we want to help them with decision making or developing an action plan. And then when they're in action, we want to do problem solving, goal setting, feedback, support. And then if they're in maintenance, we want to just help them build resilience, self-monitoring, cognitive restructuring, identifying the high-risk situations, giving feedback and support. And then if they're in relapse, we want to maintain that support, normalize relapse, information sharing, learning from relapse, things of that nature. And then there's another interesting aspect of this diagram that I want to discuss with you. Note on the bottom side of the diagram that the stages of change are also linked to changes in knowledge and attitude in addition to behaviors. You can't really change a behavior until you have sufficient knowledge about why you should change that behavior. And you're also not likely to change a behavior until your attitudes around that behavior or its consequences also change. And lastly, you will need certain requisite skills to make these changes. Motivational interviewing can be used to really help support clients with varying degrees of motivation to achieve and maintain their goals. And it's a directive, a client-centered method of interacting aimed at helping the clients to explore and resolve their ambivalence about their substance use and to progress through those stages of change. It's especially useful when working with clients in the contemplation stage, but the principles and the skills are important at all the stages. So motivational interviewing, it's based on the understanding that effective treatment is part of the natural process of change. Counselors can assist clients to become more motivated to change their behaviors. And this stylistic approach of an intervention is going to affect its outcome. Like an empathetic style in counseling is more likely to achieve a more positive treatment outcome than one that's not. And motivational interviewing can help support clients who are already highly motivated to achieve their goals. So motivational interviewing techniques, they're useful for a couple reasons. First, people come to counselors for a variety of reasons. MI techniques enable clients to feel more comfortable disclosing relevant information. Next, many clients, they're not aware of how their substance use may be linked to some of the problems that they're facing that have led them to seek counseling. So MI techniques are going to help the clients to distinguish between their current behavior, maybe the use of substances, and their issues of concern, like how it may be affecting their ambitions or their goals or their values. So linking motivational interviewing with developing discrepancy, it's going to be a means of enabling your client to see where they're at and where they want to be maybe aren't the same. And that can be really especially effective. Another reason is MI can provide motivation for people to contemplate their substance use and build resolve for change. So the focus of MI is on eliciting the client's intrinsic motivation for change. It's going to imply no judgment about extrinsic approaches, and this can be quite effective in modifying behavior. Motivational interviewing may even work with those who initially come for counseling as a result of these extrinsic pressures, like being forced by parents or a spouse or local police or probation officer. Another reason is that motivational interviewing is going to differ from motivational strategies that are intended to impose change through these extrinsic means, like legal sanctions, punishment, social pressure, financial gain, etc. So here we have some dangerous assumptions that you may feel compelled to make that are going to interfere with your ability to apply motivational interviewing, and it may reduce the likelihood that the client's going to change their behavior. The first is if you believe that clients should change their behavior. And it's also unhelpful to believe that all clients really want to change and they're very enthusiastic about changing. And if you make this assumption, you might begin by thinking something like, oh, this is going to be really easy if my clients are clear about what they need to do. And if you think that everybody's enthusiastic about making changes, then you're going to be very disappointed. A lot of clients are pre-contemplators. And it's also dangerous to assume that the main reason that people want to change their behavior is to become healthier. Maintaining good health is often not a priority or a major priority for a lot of people. So it's critical to identify what is important to your clients, not what's important to you. And it's not going to be helpful if you think every time your clients don't succeed that you have failed. Just remember, you're trying to help them, but in addition to your efforts to really counsel and support, your clients must be the ones who work at making changes. Motivating someone to change is not like turning on a light switch. There are degrees of motivation, and we're going to learn how to determine how motivated someone is in order to really assist them to change. It's also not helpful to assume that your clients must change right now. Sometimes people aren't ready to make a change. And it might take more time, and it's going to be really unhelpful to insist that they have to do it right now. And it's also unhelpful to think that, you have to be tough with your clients, and that if you're not tough, they're not going to change their behavior. This may have an adverse effect and increase their resistance to change. And then finally, it's not going to be helpful for you to assume that your clients know nothing and that you know what's best for them. A good counselor listens to their clients and learns from them as well. So, motivational interviewing techniques can be applied to assist with behavior change on a variety of problematic behaviors. So, you can assess the client's stage of change. Motivational interviewing can be used really at any stage of change. So, as I've discussed previously, assessing a client's stage of change is going to be really crucial in determining the appropriate interventions to progress with treatment. And motivational interviewing can raise client awareness during the pre-contemplation stage. And it can help with the decision making during the contemplating stage. And then during the action and the maintenance phases, it can remind clients of their resolution to change. And then following a relapse, it's kind of a vehicle for reassessment. And it's often used most successfully during that contemplation stage, which is a time during which the client is experiencing significant ambivalence. Motivational interviewing is also going to provide an opportunity for the clients to review the costs and the benefits of specific decisions. So this weighing exercise may assist some clients to move into the action stage or to maintain certain behaviors when the going gets tough. And then in addition to helping clients increase their resolve to change, motivational interviewing may help clients clarify the costs and the benefits of their substance use and identify some goals for the future. And as clients are identifying these costs and benefits of what they're doing and where it's leading them, their life goals and maybe consideration for subsequent goals might become more clear. So motivational interviewing is going to help the clients to uncover information that both the client and the counselor can use to kind of move things forward. So in the pre-contemplation stage, the client may be happy to help or to keep using drugs, So in order for motivational interviewing to be used as a valid decision-making tool, the counselor has to accept a client's decision to continue using drugs. But, using motivational interviewing during pre-contemplation stage, regardless of the client's decision to keep using, it's still going to assist the counseling process later on when the client has moved to the contemplation stage. So motivational interviewing attempts to kind of move them forward in the future. So self-confrontation is one of the most important elements in motivational interviewing. Traditional approaches tend to use direct confrontation in order to overcome any client denial. So these approaches can yield even greater resistance. And through motivational interviewing, clients are able to discover some of the costs and some of the benefits of their action on their own. And as they hear themselves speaking about their own problems, they are going to be less defensive. And so they're also more likely to come to their own conclusions and support the next steps than if they were told what to do. And motivational interviewing is going to take advantage of the psychological principle that suggests that people learn about themselves when they hear their own voice vocalize what they think and feel. And they also tend to increase their commitment to do things when they hear themselves say them out loud. And while this doesn't mean that they're going to actually do anything, it's likely to increase the chances of their acting on their own volition. Verbalizing commitment is an important step in making a decision. So before you make a commitment, merely talking about what you're going to do really does increase the likelihood that you are going to do it. So I want you to think about, why is it that you think that talking about the future commitment makes it more likely that it's going to happen? Feel free to pause and put your answer down in the comment box below. And just understand that if you don't vocalize your commitment, your brain may cleverly minimize the gravity of the problem and its consequences, and it may not address the various details and the individual's concern. But when you vocalize your concerns and the potential consequences of your behaviors, you're going to force your brain to listen, and you're likely to make discoveries. In fact, you can actually surprise your brain. You might discover that vocalized thoughts take a new shape that you didn't formerly have when you were inside your head, and that the communication between your mouth and your ears is going to enhance your ability to examine problems and make decisions and commit to some desired outcomes. And just know that clients do have the right to choose. Rather than deciding what's best for the client, the motivational interviewing approach is going to encourage the client to make decisions for themselves. So the counselor only assists the client to come to their own conclusion that change is necessary. So just know that the process of change is a continuum. The strategies for the various interventions are linked to the stages of change. In the pre-contemplation stage, the client's in denial. They don't consider giving it up. In the contemplation stage, this is the, okay, well, maybe. The client begins to think about doing something. Then in the action stage, this is the Nike stage where we're just doing it. The client is attempting to quit or reducing their intake. And then in the maintenance stage, the client has internalized this change. They're succeeding in giving up and they want to maintain that status. And then in the lapse stage, the client is resuming their use, which is a normal part of the change process. And not everyone goes through every stage. So some strategies for interventions are linked to a client's specific stage of change. And an accurate assessment of a client's stage of change is really going to assist the counselor to target the interventions appropriately. Motivational interviewing is a style of counseling that aims to facilitate patient-driven decisions to change their harmful behavior. And it's going to be useful for a person who is contemplating changing their behavior, but they may be experiencing ambivalence. And lastly, when people hear their own words or thoughts, they're more likely to be motivated to make those changes.